Hey guys, this is Speed Day 7, Part 2. Alright, Liz took 4 hours to travel from town A to town B. Her average speed for the whole trip was 60 kilometers per hour. For the first 4/5 of the trip, she traveled at an average speed of 64 kilometers per hour. Find her average speed for the remaining trip. Okay, I've drawn a model on my PowerPoint, and it's the same thing that you have as what you have on your notes. But let's go ahead and start with labeling our word problem. Now it says here that Liz took 4 hours to travel from town A to town B. Now that's actually going to be our total time, right? Because that's the total time that she spent traveling. And then we have our average speed for the whole trip, 60 kilometers per hour. And you can see I have those marked down here. For the first 4/5 of the trip, she traveled at an average speed of 64 kilometers per hour. That's actually my speed 1, because that's the speed that she traveled at for the first portion. And we want to find her average speed for the remaining trip. So I'm actually trying to find speed 2 in this problem. Well, just looking at our problem here, we've got a total time and a total speed. So obviously I can find a total distance without too much trouble. Before we go any further, I'm going to just have you section off your paper into 4, just right below that word problem, because there are quite a few steps to this word problem, and so I want to make sure that you keep your work neat. But let's start with what we know. We know we can find total distance, and eventually we want to find that speed. But to do that, we're going to need this distance right here plus that time. So distance total is going to be the average speed times the total time, which was, if we look back up here, it's 60 kilometers per hour times 4 hours. And 60 times 4, shortcut guys, let's just do 6 times 4, that's 24, and since we actually multiplied 6 tens, we need to add a 0, so 240 kilometers. Okay, I'm also going to mark this on my model. Okay, and then in your word problem it says for the first 4/5 of a trip. All right, now, since our word problem refers to our trip as being in 5 parts, that's how I've marked that on our model that's in front of you. So we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, all right? If we know that the whole distance is 240 kilometers, we can just use good old unitary method to figure out what one portion of that trip will be, and then that will give me this part right here. Okay, so 5 units is going to be equal 240 kilometers, and let's divide both sides by 5, or over here you can see that I've multiplied it by 1/5, but that's the same thing. Okay, and we've got 1 unit as 240 divided by 5. So let's do that math up here. 240 divided by 5. 5 goes into 24 4 times. 4 times 5 is 20. Bring that down, that 0. 5 goes into 40 8 times. So 1 unit is going to be 48 kilometers. All right, I'm going to mark that right here. Okay, now we've got a distance, and we've got a distance, and we don't have a time yet, do we? But we can use that distance. We know that 1 unit equals 48. We've got a speed over here, so we sure can find the time for that first leg of the trip, can't we? So let's do that. Let's figure out what this distance is, and that's just going to be 240 minus 48. So let's do that over here. And because each of these are 48, okay, so 240 minus 48 is going to be 192. Okay, and let's mark that right there. Okay, now we can find the time 1. So time 1 is going to be distance 1 over speed 1. We have both of those. So 192 kilometers divided by 64 kilometers per hour. And our time 1, looks like we need to do a little bit more math. I'm going to erase some of this over here. Oh, whoops. That didn't erase, did it? Okay, so 192 divided by 64, and I'm going to guess 3. 3 times 4 is 12. 3 times 6 is 18, plus 1 is 19. Ooh, I was right on. Okay, so our time 1 is going to be 3 hours. Now remember that our entire trip is 4 hours, so since we found our time 1, we just subtract 4 hours minus 3 hours is going to be 1 hour. So this time over here is going to be 1 hour. Okay, now we've got a distance and we've got a time, so we can find our speed. All right, so our speed 2 is going to be distance 2 over time 2. And our distance 2 is 48 kilometers. I'm looking right here. It's just that little section. Divided by 1 hour. Oh, this is going to be an easy division problem, isn't it? So our speed 2 is 48 kilometers per hour. Now you guys agree with me, I think, when I keep telling you that these speed problems are just like puzzles, that you just have to kind of keep working systematically, figuring out one variable, which will lead you to figure out another variable, and pretty soon you have the whole problem solved. All right, we have one more. Okay, Adam drove from Fort Collins to Colorado Springs. He covered 1/4 of the trip in the first hour and 1/3 of the trip in the second hour. He took 3 hours to travel the remaining 120 kilometers. Find his average speed for the whole trip. Well, let's start marking some things in here. He covered 1/4 of the trip in the first hour and 1/3 of the trip in the second hour. And then he took 3 hours to travel the remaining 120 kilometers. This is puzzling. And also on your notes, it looks a little bit different. You have a bracket with 2 hours. But let's talk about this 1/4 and 1/3 really quick. Okay, I need to figure out how to break up my trip, because that's the only way I'm going to be able to solve this, is by assigning portions of the trip to different things here. So since I have a 1/4 here and I have a 1/3 here, I need to find a common denominator. And the lowest common denominator that I'm going to be able to find between 1/4 and 1/3 is going to be 12ths. Okay, so your model is already divided up for you into 12 parts, and so it kind of makes it easy. But if you're ever not sure, you can multiply those denominators, and that will give you a common denominator. It might not be the lowest common denominator, but it will give you a place to start. Okay, so I've got it divided up into 12ths. Now we can start marking on our model. And this one is obviously really important that we do that we use a model, because otherwise we get, I don't know, it would just get really tough. So let's see what 1/3 is in 12ths. If I want to convert a 1/3 to 12ths, let's see. I multiply this 3 times 4 to get to 12ths, so that means I need to multiply that 1 times 4, and I'm going to end up with 4/12ths. That was my 1/3, and let's see what 1/4 is. 1/4 equals something over 12, so I had to multiply 4 times 3 to get 12. That means I multiply 1 times 3 to get 12, and that's going to be 3/12ths. Okay, so my 1/4 of the trip is going to be right here, these 3/12ths. And then my 1/3 of the trip is going to be these 4 right here. Okay, and that's why that's why on your notes it says 2 hours, and those brackets span 7/12ths, because 3/12ths plus 4/12ths is 7/12ths. Okay, so we have 2 hours that have elapsed here. And then he took 3 hours to travel the remaining 120 kilometers. So you know that you can assign the rest of those portions to 120 kilometers. So let's figure out first, since we have let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 units there assigned to 120 kilometers. Let's find let's use unitary method to find the distance of the entire trip, okay? So let's just mark distance total over here. And we're not going to use our speed formula, we're just going to use unitary method. So 5 units equals 120 kilometers. 1 unit is going to be 120 divided by 5. And we can go over here and do that real quick. So 120 divided by 5 is going to be, I believe, 24, but let's just check. Yes, 24. So 1 unit equals 24 kilometers. Okay, awesome. So now we know that each one of these little sections is 24. We want to solve for 12 units. That means we need to multiply 24 times 12. And let's do that over here. And 2 times 4 is 8, 2 times 2 is 2, 1 times 4 is 4, 1 times 2 is 2, and we get 288 kilometers. Okay. So let's mark that on our model. 288 kilometers. Now I can do my total time, can't I? So we know that, let's see, it gives us the total time. We've got a time here, a time here, and a time here. So I'm just going to do 1 hour. Actually, let's do it like this. On your notes, you have 2 hours written there. So let's just do time 1 plus time 2. And time 1 is 2 hours, and time 2 is 3 hours. So my total time is 5 hours. Okay, so my question is, find average speed for the whole trip. So I am all set up to do that now, aren't I? Because I have my total time, and I have my total distance. Sorry about the slide progressions there, you guys. Okay, so average speed is total distance over total time. So 288 kilometers divided by 5 hours. And yes, I'm going to end up with a decimal. I'm going to make some room over here to go ahead and do that math with you. Okay, so we have 288, and we want to divide that by 5. 5 goes into 28 5 times. 5 times 5 is 25. Bring down that 8, and 5 goes into 38 7 times. 7 times 5 is 35. And I've got a 3 there. Okay, now I need to add a decimal place in the 0, so I'll bring down a 0. 30 divided by 5 is 6, and since 6 times 5 is 30, I'm done. So my average speed is going to be 57.6 kilometers per hour. And that's the answer. All right, that's it. Have a good evening.